Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about The God Machine, a brand new studio album, the 12th overall, from German power metal legends and pioneers, Blind Guardian. I may not be a huge fan of modern power metal, but I do have a soft spot for old school power metal, like late 80s, early 90s power metal, like Halloween, Running Wild, Savatage, Crimson Glory. I fucking love that shit. And that includes Blind Guardian. Honestly, I'd go as far as to say that records like Follow the Blind and Tales from the Twilight World are some of the best power metal records ever made. Like, if I were to do a top 10 list right now, they'd both be there. Pretty damn near close to the top, too. And even though Blind Guardian does lose a little bit of their luster and appeal for me personally as they delve more into symphonic power metal territory in the late 90s and early 2000s, I will say overall, out of all of these older power metal bands, they probably still have one of the more consistent and interesting discographies to delve into and dissect and explore. 2015's Beyond the Red Mirror in particular, I think is a great record. A little bloated, and definitely a little melodramatic and over the top, too much so for its own good, but, you know, whatever. That kind of comes with the territory of power metal, specifically of symphonic power metal. And this brings us now finally to The God Machine, their first proper studio album since Beyond the Red Mirror. To be fair, Blind Guardian did drop an album in 2019, Legacies of the Dark Land, but this was more of an orchestral record, whereas now we're getting back to some good old-fashioned power metal. And when I say good old-fashioned, I do in fact mean good old-fashioned. While there are the more bombastic elements of symphonic power metal still within the realms of Blind Guardian, this is also a very thrashy and metallic and brutal affair at times, very much on par with the aforementioned Follow the Blind. In fact, just like how Follow the Blind was inspired by classic Testament, I would argue that The God Machine is heavily inspired at times by modern Testament. Violent Shadows, in particular, has a riff that would not at all be out of place on Titans of Creation. Lyrically, too, I would say this thing is a little bit more urgent and poignant and emotive than your typical Blind Guardian release. Mind you, in typical Blind Guardian fashion, there's still a lot of fantasy literature representation here. For instance, Damnation is about the King Killer Chronicle, a fantasy series written by Patrick Rothfuss. Secrets of the American Gods references Neil Gaiman's fantasy novel American Gods, and Blood of the Elves references the first novel in the Witcher series, Blood of Elves, written by, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this man's name, because I've no earthly fucking idea, but Deliver Us from Evil is heavily inspired by Arthur Miller's The Crucible, a dramatized retelling of the Salem witch trials, which also acts as an allegory for McCarthyism. So much so that Arthur Miller was questioned by the House of Representatives Committee on Un-American Activities in 1956 and convicted of contempt of Congress for refusing to identify others present at meetings he had attended. I don't know if it's intentional per se, but considering the source of inspiration and considering the times we live in, and considering the fact this album is called The God Machine, I feel like this also kind of taps into a kind of anxiety that is felt when dealing with religious extremism. All of which appropriately sonically translated through blazing guitar pyrotechnics, crushing razor-sharp thrash metal riffs and rhythms, and some very bombastic heavenly choirs crying out for help, for hope, for redemption. On a much more personal and heart-wrenching note, you have Let It Be No More, which shows Hansi Kirsch reflecting on the death of his mother. Hansi's anguished vocal wailing is the star of the show here. Like, he really does sound like he's about to break down in the studio, singing about his mother. And I also love, like, a lot of the synth and guitar work that is used to contrast this and to kind of help his vocals blossom. What's most impressive, though, is ultimately how hungry and determined Blind Guardian sound, and are on this record. They're so confident in what they're doing. I mean, these guys are in their mid to late 50s. They're getting older, and it doesn't show for even a fucking second. Damnation, for instance, is filled with, like, this really intense, pummeling machine gun riffery and percussion. Once again, tapping into some classic thrash metal flavor and spice and sizzle here. Once again, I am reminded very much so of Testament. Meanwhile, Secrets of the American Gods taps into some more symphonic power metal bombast with a lot of evocative strings and a lot of massive, bold, anthemic choruses and hooks. Then there's Life Beyond the Spheres, which is a very cosmic number in a very literal sense, dealing with the creation of the universe itself. As such, it spends a lot of time building up atmosphere and tension. It never really arrives to like this massive, explosive, cathartic finish or end, but I don't know, I kind of like that. I kind of like how it just kind of tapers on, almost as if you yourself are exploring the cosmos and just constantly discovering new shit at every fucking turn, and there's no end in sight. The closing track, Destiny, is a little melodramatic for my personal liking. Much like Secrets of the American Gods, it taps into symphonic power metal bombast and energy, which, fine in theory, but in execution, this feels like something that might have been, like, cut from a Rhapsody of Fire record. But, I mean, there's still some really great vocal work, there's still some really great guitar work. It's not how I would close this record, but then again, I'm not Blind Guardian, so what the fuck do I know? I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 on this. I think it's a great record. I think it does a really good job at combining, like, the thrash metal, speed metal side of Blind Guardian with, like, the symphonic power metal side of Blind Guardian. It's epic, it's dramatic, it's consistently really entertaining, even when it dips into some heavier subject matter or some more emotive territory. I think Blind Guardian fans are going to be absolutely elated with this. I mean, the whole time I've been describing this, even before I was recording, and I was just describing this to Anna, she was like, oh fuck, I cannot wait to fucking check this out. And how do you feel now, Anna? Speak of the devil. You want to check this out?
Yes.
Yeah! 4 out of 5. Great record. I don't have much more to say, so we're just going to wrap it up. Check it out. New Blind Guardian. It's fucking great. Honestly. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.